It was one of those rare, peaceful evenings in Seattle when even the city lights seemed a little softer and the rain finally pours outside my window. My apartment wasn't much, top floor in an old building near Capitol Hill, but on nights like this, it felt almost magical. The hum of distant traffic was just a low comfort, and my tiny living room was wrapped in that yellow lamp glow that made everything seem gentler. I curled up on my couch, a thick grey blanket tangled around my legs, half watching an old episode of a Friends I'd probably seen 20 times already. I held a mug of chamomile tea between my hands, letting the steam drift into my face. There was something soothing about doing nothing. My mind needed the rest after the work week. I glanced at my phone on the coffee table, its screen black, undemanding. For once, I was determined not to scroll, not to reply to anyone, not to check Slack or even Instagram. It was my own quiet little rebellion, choosing myself for the evening. That lasted about 15 minutes. A cheerful ding shattered the silence, a voice message notification. My heart always recognized that sound. Logan. Even before I picked up the phone, I felt that little spark in my chest, that small leap of anticipation that, despite everything, I couldn't quite control. Funny how quickly love can become a reflex. We'd been together almost 3 years. Long enough that his name on my screen still made me smile, but not so long that I'd stopped waiting for surprises, little declarations, shared jokes, or a miss you had dropped into a busy day. I picked up the phone and glanced at the preview, 32 seconds. I could almost imagine what he'd say, something sweet, a warm joke, maybe asking if I'd found his hoodie he always left behind. Without thinking, I pressed play. His voice filled the room, lower than usual, almost intimate, like he was right next to me instead of wherever he was that night. "I can't stop thinking about last night," he said. "You looked so good." She has no idea. For a second, the words didn't even register. I just basked in the familiar sound of his voice, the soft way he drew out my name. Then my mind caught up. My smile froze. My heartbeat stuttered, and the mug nearly slipped from my hands. There was a slight pause, as if he checked to make sure he was alone before saying the next part, his voice dropping even lower, almost careless. "I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you." The world seemed to tilt just a little, as if my apartment had shifted onto a different axis. I stared at my phone, replaying the words in my head. Not for me. Those words were never meant for me. For a moment, I held on to the hope, absurd, desperate, that I'd misheard. Maybe it was a joke, some misunderstanding. Maybe it was meant for me and he'd gotten the phrasing all wrong. But I knew Logan too well. He was precise, rarely careless. He didn't stumble over his words. The confidence in his voice, the ease with which he delivered the lie, cut deeper than any argument or raised voice ever could. I pressed the back button on the message, as if that might erase what I'd just heard. My hands were shaking so hard the phone rattled against my mug. I sat there, motionless, feeling the quiet close in around me. The television droned on, oblivious, but I heard nothing except the echo of his voice, so familiar, so suddenly foreign. Something in me locked up tight, a kind of instinctual bracing, like my heart was trying to protect itself from what came next. For several long minutes, I just stared at the blank screen, refusing to cry, refusing even to breathe too deeply. Everything in my apartment, the favorite old lamp, the Seattle snow globe he brought back from a business trip, the throw blanket he'd bought me, felt like a set piece from a life that belonged to someone else. A parallel universe where I didn't know the truth. I could almost see myself, a week ago, listening to a different message, believing in a different version of the man who now sat at the heart of my world. How quickly everything could change. Finally, I set the mug down and pressed play again. Not to torture myself, but because I needed to hear every syllable. Every hint of laughter, every pause that might mean something more. His tone was so easy, so warm, like a secret shared under the covers at midnight. There was even a small laugh at the end, a sound that once melted me but now sounded like a knife. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't sorry. He was just somewhere else. That was the moment I knew my life had split. There was everything before that message and everything after. And I would never be the same. I didn't play the message a third time. Not yet. My hands were cold, fingertips pressed white against the sides of my phone, as if squeezing it could force the words to disappear, to return the night to what it had been, safe, uneventful, mine. But there's a moment, when trust is broken, that your mind splits into two halves, the one that wants to deny everything and the one that already knows you've crossed a line you can never step back over. The room felt smaller. My cozy apartment, usually my retreat from the world, was suddenly unfamiliar, like I'd wandered into someone else's memory. The walls, once warm with old photos and plants trailing from their pots, felt close and suffocating. I could still hear the background noise of the sitcom on TV, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater, from some distant place where nothing but ever happened. But my world was here, and it was suddenly very, very silent. I don't know how long I sat like that. Minutes, maybe hours. My mind replayed the message in jagged fragments. You looked so good. She has no idea. I'll tell her I'm working late again. I wondered if there'd been other messages, other nights. How many times had he stood in this very room, hugged me good night, and then lied without even blinking? I stared at the mug of tea, now lukewarm, steam gone, feeling my thoughts growing sharp and cold, like the wind that sometimes howled down the city's narrow streets in January. I should have cried. I should have screamed. But instead, there was only a hollow sort of calm, a stillness I'd never known before. Eventually, my survival instincts kicked in. If this was going to be the end of something, I wanted to be sure. I picked up the phone again, opened the audio file, and quietly saved it to a folder marked a miscellaneous. Then, on autopilot, I attached it to an email, addressed to myself, and hit send. Just in case, I thought, though I had no idea what a just in case even meant yet. There was a strange relief in the ritual of it, taking control, even in a small way. For the first time that night, I felt a sliver of purpose. Not vengeance. Not even anger. Just focus. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and tried to find my way back to normal. I picked up the remote and turned up the volume, but the laughter from the TV sounded false, grating. I let the sitcom run until the credits rolled, then muted it and let the room settle into a heavier silence. The windows rattled a little from the wind. The city outside moved on, uncaring, while my life felt like it was stuck on pause. I found myself tracing backwards, retracing conversations, moments that had felt strange at the time but hadn't made sense until now. Last Friday, when Logan came home late and the scent of someone else's cologne lingered on his jacket. He'd laughed it off. Some guy in accounting bades and that stuff. You know offices. Or the way his phone was always turned face down when we were together lately, and how he'd started replying to texts in the bathroom, saying it was just a work thing. All those late meetings that ran hours longer than usual, when he'd come home tired but not really present, and the way he'd stopped leaving his laptop open on the kitchen counter like he used to. Now it all clicked together, a puzzle I'd been trying to solve with the wrong pieces. I felt foolish, yes, but also suddenly awake. The fog of confusion burned away, replaced by clarity that hurt as much as it helped. I didn't write him back that night. I didn't want to say anything, not even a simple good night. I turned my phone off for the first time in months and let it go dark, slipping it into the drawer of my bedside table. If he noticed my silence, he'd probably assume I was tired. That was exactly what I wanted. He didn't deserve to see the storm forming behind my calm. I forced myself to go through the motions of a normal bedtime routine, brushed my teeth, washed my face, folded up the blanket on the couch. I even set my alarm for work the next day, though I knew I'd barely sleep. When I finally lay down, I stared up at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. I wondered how many women before me had reached this moment, lying awake, realizing that the life they thought they'd built was actually just a story someone else was telling them. It was a lonely kind of knowledge, but I held onto it like armor. Sometime after 2 a.m., I must have drifted off, because I woke to the soft grey light of dawn and the familiar ping of Logan's usual morning text. Morning. Sunshine. Got that big meeting today. Wish me luck? I looked at the screen, my face blank, my hands steady. The mask slipped into place as easily as breathing. I typed back, "Eat good luck. You'll be great. Don't forget your lunch in the fridge, winky face." He replied with a string of emojis, and just like that, we were back to the performance, the comfortable rhythm of pretending. But underneath it all, I felt something new, a quiet, cold certainty. I was done being the girl who didn't know. That entire day, I moved through my routines like an actress hitting her marks, every gesture measured, every word deliberate, all while my thoughts raced far ahead of me. I packed my lunch, left for work on time, even stopped to grab coffee from the corner place Logan and I used to visit on weekends. The barista greeted me by name, handed me my usual, and asked if I wanted a treat for my boyfriend. I smiled and said maybe next time, then left a bigger tip than usual, because kindness felt like the one thing I could still control. Seattle's morning rain had turned the sidewalks glossy, and I watched my own reflection wobble beside me as I walked. The city was waking up all around me, dogs barking on leashes, bus doors hissing open, office lights flicking on one by one in glass towers overhead. Everyone rushing, everyone with somewhere to be. I wondered if any of them suspected the quiet implosions happening inside the people they passed. Work was a blur. I sat at my desk, staring at spreadsheets and Slack notifications that seemed almost comical in their urgency. I answered emails, attended meetings, even managed a joke or two during a video call, pretending my world hadn't been rearranged overnight. My co-workers saw only what I allowed, the reliable, efficient Anna who always delivered on deadlines and never missed a birthday card. No one knew about the recording saved to my email, or the message I played over and over in my mind. Whenever I had a free moment, my thoughts slipped back to Logan, to the inflection in his voice on that message. How easy it had sounded, how familiar, like a routine he'd mastered. The pain was sharpest in those details, the sense that I was the only one who didn't know the script. By lunchtime, I realized I wasn't angry, at least not yet. What I felt was a strange curiosity, a hunger for the truth that overpowered even the heartbreak. Who was she, their EUE in his message? How long had this been going on? Was it just a new thing, a passing thrill, or had she been part of his life, and therefore mine, for months? Most importantly, why did he think I would never find out? It was almost clinical, the way I began to study him. After work, I scrolled back through our texts, rereading weeks of exchanges with new eyes. All the sweet good nights, "they're working late, don't wait up," are the jokes that now sounded a little too performative. I noticed the gaps, those empty hours when he'd go silent, then reappear as if nothing had happened, picking up a conversation midstream. I even checked his Instagram, something I rarely did, and noticed he'd recently started following someone named Emily, her account set to private, her profile photo all cheekbones and sunshine, the kind of effortless beauty that made me feel both threatened and a little sorry for her. That evening, I watched him more closely than ever. Logan came home at his usual time, carrying groceries and whistling off-key like nothing in the world could be wrong. He kissed my cheek, made a joke about the neighbor's cat, and started prepping dinner with a relaxed ease that would have fooled anyone else. I played along. I asked about his day, laughed at his jokes, even helped him chop vegetables, all while my mind catalogued every detail. The way he hesitated before answering when I asked about his meetings, the flicker of his eyes toward his phone when it buzzed on the counter. He was good, almost perfect, but not quite. Later that night, lying beside him in bed, I pretended to fall asleep. My breathing slowed, my body curled toward the wall. I listened as he scrolled quietly on his phone, his thumb making those faint, rapid movements that meant texting, not reading. Every so often, a muffled laugh, low and private, escaped him. He thought I was asleep. He always did. But that night, I was more awake than ever. I realized I was at a crossroads. I could confront him now, explode the secret, demand answers, let the truth tumble out in all its ugliness. But that would mean giving up the only power I had left, control over what happened next. No, I told myself. Not yet. I needed more. Suspicion was fuel, but I needed facts. I needed to know the full story before I decided how mine would end. So I watched. I listened. I began to collect every small lie, every slip, every micro-expression that betrayed his unease. I let him believe everything was as it had always been, safe, predictable, routine. I played the part so well that sometimes even I believed it. But inside, I was making plans. I became someone new, patient, sharp, quietly observant. I started asking questions in casual ways, dropping them into conversation like a fisherman casting a line and waiting for a tug. Busy day at work. Here? Who was on the call so late? You're getting so many notifications. Everything okay at the office? Sometimes he answered smoothly. Other times, his answers came with a hitch, a nervous smile, a quick change of subject. Each time, I made a mental note. Each time, the picture got a little clearer. This wasn't about catching him in a single lie. It was about building something undeniable, something even he couldn't talk his way out of. The more I watched, the more I realized just how much I'd missed, and how much I was now unwilling to miss ever again. And deep down, underneath the pain, a new feeling began to take root. Not just anger, not just betrayal, but a kind of fierce resolve. He'd chosen the game, but I would be the one to choose the ending. Over the next several days, I became obsessed with gathering details. I moved through each interaction with Logan like an undercover agent in my own life, looking for clues in every offhand comment, every pause, every time he reached for his phone and put it face down. But the strangest thing was how calm I felt, almost clinical, as if I'd stepped outside myself and was watching someone else's relationship unfold. At work, I functioned on autopilot, answering emails, running reports, laughing at jokes that didn't feel funny anymore. I kept up the act with Logan, too, sending him quick texts during the day, asking about his lunch, reminding him to pick up dry cleaning, all the little rituals that had once felt intimate and now seemed almost theatrical. Inside, I was anything but passive. When he left for a late meetings, I scrolled through his social media, hunting for patterns. His Instagram, once a random collection of food pics and city skylines, was suddenly more curated. Group photos, team events, nights out that I never seemed to hear about until after the fact. And there was Emily, always tagged, always near the center of the shot, her smile bright enough to light up even the grainiest bar photo. I told myself it could be nothing, just colleagues, just friends. But my instincts screamed otherwise. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. One night, after Logan fell asleep, I sat in the dim blue glow of my laptop, my heart thudding as I searched his name alongside hers. There they were, not just in office happy hours but at charity galas, at rooftop bars, even at a vineyard upstate for a team building a weekend. In one photo, his arm was slung casually over the back of Emily's chair, his face inches from hers, both laughing at something just between them. My stomach twisted, but my hands were steady. The more I saw, the less I wanted to believe it, but the facts piled up with every click. Emily liked his posts late at night, left inside jokes in the comments, sent him photos from concerts he claimed he never attended. The pieces fit together with such cruel efficiency that I almost had to admire their boldness. I started to notice the changes in myself. I was less quick to react, less likely to let anger rise. Instead, everything felt sharpened and purposeful. I catalogued what I knew. The exact dates of his work trips that coincided with Emily's photo dumps from Portland, LA, or wine country. The frequency of their interactions, both online and, I assumed, offline. The private smiles exchanged across crowded rooms in every tagged picture. I could have confronted him a dozen times, but each time I chose not to. Not yet. I wanted everything in place, no room for denials, no opportunity to twist the story. I wanted the ending to be my own, not just a reaction to his betrayal. One evening, we were sitting on the couch together, each pretending to be absorbed in our own screens. Logan scrolled through TikTok, occasionally showing me a meme or a funny video, laughing like he always did. I smiled and nodded, played along, but in my mind I was rehearsing what I'd say when the time came to reveal what I knew. Dinner was its own theatre. I asked about his day, kept my tone light, watched for the telltale flinch in his eyes when I mentioned anything related to work or after-hours plans. He lied smoothly, almost effortlessly now. The guilt wasn't visible, but the distance was, a small, growing gap that neither of us tried to bridge. I started learning about Emily, her hobbies, her favorite restaurants, even which friends she tagged most often. She wasn't a villain. She was just the other side of the story. I almost pitied her, imagining how this would all unravel. But the more I discovered, the more powerful I felt. The secrecy became my shield. While Logan drifted through our shared life, believing his secret was safe, I crafted my plan piece by piece, never tipping my hand. I watched the two of them build a world on the margins of mine, and I waited. I listened to the message he'd sent me, sent not for me, but to the woman I was never supposed to know about. The audio clip was my quiet weapon, stored and ready. I played it every few nights, burning the details into my mind, letting it fuel the resolve I felt growing with each passing day. My friends noticed I was quieter, but I brushed off their concerns. Just work stuff, I'd say. Seasonal blues. I smiled more, not less. I acted lighter, not heavier. If Logan noticed the change, he never said a word. Soon enough, an opportunity presented itself. Logan mentioned a dinner party at Ben's apartment, a gathering of friends and coworkers, a chance for everyone to catch up. "You'll come, right?" he asked, almost nervous, almost eager. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, because I already knew what I would do. "Of course," I said, already picturing the moment in perfect clarity. That night, I lay awake with anticipation swirling in my chest. For the first time since everything started, I felt the scales tilt back in my favor. I wasn't just the betrayed girlfriend anymore. I was the author of my own ending, and Logan had no idea the final act was already written. The week leading up to Ben's dinner party felt oddly electric. For the first time since Logan's message shattered my sense of reality, I felt something close to anticipation. Not joy, not even satisfaction, just a taut redness, as if all the energy I'd wasted on anxiety had finally crystallized into a sharp, icy focus. I kept up the act, slipping through my daily routine with new confidence. Mornings were ordinary: coffee, a quick run, tossing him a good lucky for some meeting he'd half invented. Evenings were practiced, domestic. I'd ask if he wanted anything from Trader Joe's. He'd offer to cook or suggest ordering in, and would end up on the couch, scrolling through Netflix or sharing updates about our day. It was all performance now. I made each gesture with purpose, conscious of the narrative I was letting him see. If Logan felt relaxed, if he sensed nothing had changed, it was because I wanted him that way. But beneath the surface, I was plotting every move. I double-checked that the recording was still safe in my email, even forwarded it to a new backup address I created just for this purpose. I found my old portable speaker, a gift from my brother the Christmas before last, tucked away in the back of a drawer. I charged it in secret, testing its volume with podcasts and music until I was sure it would fill any room. I rehearsed what I would say, then decided not to script it at all. I wanted to be in the moment, to read the room, to let whatever needed to happen simply unfold. At work, I watched the world move on, my colleagues absorbed in their own problems, the city bustling past outside my office window. I wondered how many of the people I passed each day carried secrets like mine: evidence, plans, heartbreaks, endings waiting for the right moment to erupt. I moved with quiet intention, checking items off my mental list. Dress for the party? Nothing too flashy, but not forgettable. Something that said, "I'm here and I'm unafraid." Bag? Large enough for the speaker, small enough to be unremarkable. Answers for possible questions? Ready. Nerves? Surprisingly calm. The night before the party, Logan was in good spirits, almost buoyant. He made us pasta, poured wine, and talked about Ben's new job and who might be at the gathering. "There'll be a lot of old friends there," he said, glancing at me as if checking my reaction. "A couple of new faces, too. Emily's coming. She's on Ben's team now." I nodded, feeling my heart slow, not race. "That'll be fun," I said. "She seems nice." He looked relieved, maybe even grateful. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all, the way he'd built his house of cards, oblivious that the wind was already rising. The next day, I spent the afternoon getting ready. I chose a dress I hadn't worn in ages, navy blue, fitted but not tight, with a neckline that framed my face and sleeves that made me feel powerful. I brushed my hair until it gleamed, applied my makeup with care, and stared at my reflection, searching for cracks but finding only resolve. I dropped the portable speaker into my bag, tucking it between my wallet and a tube of lipstick. Then I walked out into the Seattle dusk, letting the evening wrap around me like armor. Logan picked me up, humming to the radio, his hand warm on my knee as we drove through the city. He was all charm, telling stories, making jokes, painting the night as something simple and bright. I watched him with a sense of detachment, as if he were a stranger I used to love. We arrived at Ben's apartment just as the party was hitting its stride. The place was filled with laughter and music, the kitchen crowded with friends holding cocktails and nibbling on hors d'oeuvres. The scent of something spicy wafted from the stove, and the windows glowed with the city lights reflected in the glass. People greeted us, hugged Logan, pulled me into conversations about work, travel, books we'd never read. I played my part, smiling, making small talk, blending into the crowd until it was time not to. I spotted Emily almost immediately. She was radiant, dressed in deep green, her laughter ringing out in a way that drew people closer. She and Logan exchanged a brief glance that said everything and nothing. I watched, careful to keep my observations to myself, to store them away for the moment when it would matter. As the night wore on, Ben gathered everyone into the living room for a toast. Glasses clinked, people cheered, and Logan stood up, grinning, to say a few words. He talked about friendship, loyalty, the years they'd all known each other. He thanked Ben for hosting, joked about old memories, and ended with a line about how lucky he was to have such a strong, honest circle. The irony nearly choked me. When the applause faded, I knew it was time. My heart was steady, my hands sure as I reached into my bag and felt for the speaker. I glanced at Emily, at Logan, at the friends who'd been part of my story for years. And I smiled. Because for the first time since that message, I felt truly in control. The room was humming with laughter and the comfortable noise of old friends, but I barely heard it. I stood just to Logan's left, a little behind him, my hand resting lightly on my bag as if it were nothing more than an afterthought. My heart beat calmly, almost eerily so. There was no trembling, no second guessing. Only the focus of someone who has made peace with what needs to happen. As Logan wrapped up his toast, thanking everyone for all the loyalty and support, I felt a strange clarity descend. The words echoed in the room, cheerful and bright, but to me they sounded hollow, like a song I'd grown tired of hearing. For a half-second, I saw the future play out in two versions. In one, I kept quiet, let the party fade into memory, went home, and let Logan's secret remain a festering wound. In the other, I opened the door to the truth, regardless of what came after. I chose the second. With a smile fixed on my face, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. The hum of conversation dipped as people noticed me moving, the shift subtle but unmistakable. Speaking of loyalty, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd, smooth and even. Logan, I think everyone here deserves to hear the man of the hour. Don't you? A few people chuckled, expecting some playful story or inside joke. Logan's eyebrows knitted in faint confusion, but he smiled at me anyway, as if expecting me to tell a funny anecdote about us. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the portable speaker. The room quieted, curiosity blooming on every face. I pressed the button, feeling the reassuring click as the device powered on. The silence thickened, anticipation stretching across the space. The first seconds of the recording were unassuming, just Logan's familiar voice, intimate and warm, the same one everyone here had heard countless times before. Then his words unfurled, as undeniable and devastating as the night they were spoken. I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so good. She has no idea. I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you. It was as if a window had been thrown open in the middle of a storm. The room went utterly still. Every conversation evaporated. Every pair of eyes swung between Logan and Emily, who sat frozen with her glass of wine halfway to her lips. The silence felt alive, expanding to fill every corner, broken only by a faint gasp from someone near the back. Logan's face cycled through a dozen emotions in a handful of seconds: confusion, disbelief, panic, and then, unmistakably, fear. Emily's cheeks flamed bright red, her eyes wide and stunned. Ben set his glass down with a soft but deliberate clink. No one spoke. No one even tried to smooth things over. For a moment, Logan opened his mouth as if to say something, to explain or deny or plead, but nothing came out. The truth hung in the air, undeniable and raw. I looked at him, really looked, maybe for the first time in months. I saw not the partner I'd loved, but a stranger whose lies had turned my home into a stage, my love into a prop for his double life. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. Only release, a deep, quiet relief, like finally setting down a burden you've carried too far. I picked up my bag, slid the speaker back inside, and turned away. Logan reached out, his hand desperate and shaking, but I stepped past him as if he were invisible. My heels clicked softly on the hardwood as I moved through the stunned crowd. Some people try to catch my eye, to offer a word or a glance of sympathy, but I didn't need it. This moment wasn't for anyone but me. No one tried to stop me. No one needed to. I stepped out into the hallway, out into the cool night air of Seattle. The street was quiet, a taxi's headlights slicing through the dark as it turned the corner. I let the city embrace me, the hum of life reminding me that endings, real endings, can be clean. Even merciful. I didn't look back at the apartment windows glowing behind me. I didn't check my phone for calls or texts or apologies. Whatever happened inside that apartment, that was Logan's mess now. I was done. As I walked away, a wave of calm washed over me, so total and unfamiliar that I almost laughed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anything or anyone. I was free. The walk home that night was strangely peaceful. My mind wasn't racing. My hands didn't shake. The city had a different texture, a soft quiet that felt like permission to breathe. Seattle's night air was brisk, carrying the distant echo of laughter from other people's stories. I didn't want to look at my phone, didn't care what notifications waited for me. I felt light, almost invisible, like the drama I'd left behind belonged to someone else. Inside my apartment, the familiar silence welcomed me. I took off my shoes and let my dress puddle to the floor, standing in the lamplight for a moment, still and present. My reflection in the hallway mirror was not the woman I'd been at the beginning of the week. There was no sadness in my eyes, no regret. Just a weary kind of relief, the kind you feel after surviving a storm you saw coming when you knew you couldn't avoid. I slept better that night than I had in months. In the morning, my phone was full, missed calls, unread texts, and a handful of voicemails from Logan. The messages were a predictable progression: disbelief, pleading, angry confusion, and finally silence. I didn't listen to a single one. I deleted them all. My friends who'd been at the party messaged me, some sending virtual hugs, others expressing pure shock, all confirming what I already knew. The truth was out, and there was no putting it back in the box. Logan's perfect image had shattered in the most public way possible. His reputation, the one he'd cared so much about, was now a whispered warning in group chats and office corridors. I wondered if he'd ever truly understand what he'd lost, or if he'd spend years telling himself a story in which he was the victim. It didn't matter. He was no longer my story to tell. In the days that followed, I waited for the pain to set in. I expected loneliness to descend, for old memories to turn sharp and cruel. But what I felt instead was nothing. A blank, peaceful stillness. I cooked myself elaborate breakfasts, just because. I took long walks by the water, letting the grey sky and salt air wash away the last traces of old heartbreak. My world felt bigger, not smaller. I deleted Logan's number, archived our old photos, put away the gifts and souvenirs that carried his name. There were moments of nostalgia, a smile at some silly inside joke, a pang when I passed a restaurant we'd once loved. But there was no urge to reach out, no desire to hear him explain or beg or apologize. My silence was my answer. I started going out again, meeting friends for coffee or happy hour, letting their warmth fill the spaces Logan's absence had left behind. I didn't tell them everything. I didn't need to. The details didn't matter, only the lesson remained. Sometimes I would catch myself smiling for no reason, at the perfect foam art on a cappuccino, at the light dancing on the water, at the simple joy of coming home to a place that felt entirely, finally, like my own. I cleaned my apartment top to bottom, rearranging furniture, moving plants, even painting a wall a bold teal just because I could. Each change was a declaration. This is mine. This is new. Logan, meanwhile, kept trying to reach me, first with long, frantic texts, then with short, desperate pleas for forgiveness. He tried to explain, to blame stress, confusion, anything but himself. I never replied. With every message left unanswered, I felt the thread connecting us grow thinner until it snapped altogether. One night, weeks after the party, I found myself scrolling through old pictures on my phone, and I didn't cry. Instead, I felt grateful for the clarity, for the strength I'd found, for the way I'd finally chosen myself. I realized then that the end hadn't been at the party. The real ending was now, in the quiet, in the way I felt at peace in my own skin. Seattle spring arrived with its slow promise of sunshine. I started leaving my windows open at night, letting in the sounds of the city, a siren, laughter, the occasional late-night music drifting up from the street. I remembered who I was before Logan, before the secrets and the waiting and the lies. I liked her. I missed her. And now, she was back. I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped out onto my tiny balcony, and let the night air fill my lungs. The city glowed, busy and beautiful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever would come next.